Imagine you move from a place where you lived all your life. Imagine you move and you leave all your children and wife. Starting all over again, but no one you know is around. Well, they didn't have to imagine. They built it up from the ground. How does it sound? Not easy cause it isn't. Could have praised them, but it didn't. But the Ray Bond, that's a winner. And they ran straight to the finish. You get to know them up close and personal. Wait, just give me a minute. Welcome to the front row. Can I get a drum roll? Intentional. We may be immigrants, but we are still intentional. We are dependable. It's just that set the bar, but still the best of all. We are intentional.
Welcome to the Intentional Immigrants podcast. Here we look at immigrants and their journeys to settle in a new, unfamiliar place. They, as pioneers, have embarked on uncharted territories so that you will be able to share in their trials, challenges, joys, and triumphs. We will learn from them so that you will not make the same mistakes. If you're a new immigrant, take hope. There is light at the end of your tunnel. You are not alone. Others have gone before you, and they have left a light for you to see. Today's guest will be Joshua Duarte. He calls the country of Brazil home. Here are some interesting facts about Brazil. Its official name is the Federative Republic of Brazil. Its capital is Brasilia. It gained its independence from Portugal on 7 September 1822. Brazil's population is approximately 209 million people. Its flag colors: green with a large yellow diamond in the center, bearing a blue celestial globe with 27 white 5-pointed stars, one for each state and the federal district, arranged in the same pattern as the night sky over Brazil. The globe has a white equatorial band with the motto, Ordem e Progresso, order and progress. Let's tune in to hear from Josh, who went from being a laborer to being a bank manager. Here's Josh. Josh, welcome to the Intentional Immigrants podcast. Would you tell us a bit about your journey?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Yolander, for having me in your podcast. My name is Joshua Duarte. For those who don't know, I currently work at RBC on campus inside the University of Alberta, and I've been with RBC now for the past 8 years. I've had a quite an exciting journey these last 15 years. I love to have the opportunity to share a little bit more with you today.
Thank you. How long ago did you migrate? You said 15 years?
Well, that's a funny story. So I was originally born in Toronto, but both of my parents are Brazilian, and they came to Canada in the mid-'80s. My brother and I were both born here, but at a very young age, around 5-6 years old, we actually moved to Brazil.
Okay.
And yeah, so it was an incredible opportunity because all of my family were in Brazil. My culture, the exposure that I had to the Brazilian culture was based on the community that my parents belonged to in Toronto. So when I moved to Brazil, I knew a little bit of Portuguese, but not very much. So it was kind of a culture shock. Everything was brand new. I still remember us coming into town, and the weather was different. You felt the sea breeze, you felt the hotness, the smells, everything, the language, everything was different. And it took some time, for sure, for us to adapt and pivot with our experience. And for about 6 years, we lived there. So I went through school. I learned to play football or soccer, as they call it here. I learned how to speak the language, read, write. And right when I was getting into, I believe it was fifth grade, I think, my parents said, okay, we're moving to America.
Whoa.
Yeah. And I mean, it was cool because my parents kind of told us that we were moving, and at that time we had a a computer, and it was an encyclopedia. We had an encyclopedia in our computer software, and I looked up the name of the city that I was going to move into, Worcester, Massachusetts. And I looked a little bit up the history that I mean, this is as much as I can remember. And trying to, help myself to the fact that I was losing all my friends, losing all my family again, losing everything. I started being good at some of the Brazilian sports, and now everything was going to have to change again. So at the age of 11, 12, early 2000s, we moved to America, Worcester, Massachusetts. That was a huge culture shock. Value system was a bit different. Traditions, the holidays were different. The language was different. Priorities within the school was different. Culture of the music was different. Everything was different. And I didn't even know where to start with my experience about becoming part of this new country. But very quickly, my brother and I, we watched TV, we communicated with people in our community, and little by little, we got organized, I guess. We had to. And then we started going to school, and like everybody else, we kind of jumped with the flow of things. So that was quite an experience. And then
how long did you spend in America?
So I lived in America for about 10 years. And yeah, so then in my early 20s, I had this desire to go to Canada, go to Toronto, and see what it was going to be like. So in my 21, 22, I moved to Toronto on my own, which I thought I was going to be able to, adapt very quickly. But again, it was a huge change. I went from living in a city with, max 200,000 people to millions of people in this massive metropolis. And very quickly, I felt like overwhelmed, and the amount of different cultures together reminded me a little bit of New York. But at the same time, the culture was different. The sports that was played is different. Yeah. So, and and I was trying to go to school and work, and it was a lot. And I didn't have like somebody in Toronto at that point that kind of could guide me. There was some communities that I was still part of, same as my parents, Brazilian communities, Brazilian churches, and that helped as well. But there was no sense of proper guidance of, oh, now that you're here, you need to, do you have your social insurance number, or do you have a health card? All of these things that you don't even think are important until they become important. So it was an interesting opportunity to transition to Toronto in the early 2010s.
Okay, so you navigated your way around the city by yourself.
My goodness, I before I would leave the house, I look at the TTC map, the Toronto Transportation Corporation, I think, and I try to think, okay, I need to go look for jobs. So I just print out some resumes and then hit the streets and just look for jobs. And it was really difficult. Even for places like McDonald's, you couldn't just walk in, fill out an application, start work. There was interviews, and I just, coming from America, it was very different. And it took me some time to land on my feet. I ended up finding some job in construction work, and later on I worked in a restaurant and then clothing store, anything I could get my hand on so I could build the necessary skill sets, but more importantly, money to sustain myself at that point, right?
Sustain yourself. What about the Canadian experience? Because for a lot of immigrants coming here, when you try and get a job, sometimes you hear, oh, you need to have the Canadian experience. So how is that experience very different from the American experience, seeing that they're both not in North America?
It's a good point. So I remember in America, at least from my experience, at that time, as long as you had a resume, and you found the right spot, they would be willing to hire you right away and start the next day.
Okay.
I knew lots of Brazilians that had that experience. I had that experience. The opportunity was just there, you know? And when I moved to Toronto, I didn't know this at the time, but Toronto, as well as Canada, had an influx of people, right? People from everywhere were coming. So and this is something that I didn't really realize, when I was moving into Toronto applying for jobs, that's around 2010. A lot of people had gotten laid off maybe 2009. They were still looking
Oh,
for work, right?
oh, it was in the financial crisis at that time.
Not too long ago, right?
Right.
So a lot of people were struggling to find jobs. And, if somebody gets laid off from one job, they go into maybe a lower tier job or the next best job that they can find. So when these individuals who are hiring, they have a lot of different great candidates that they can pick from. So individuals like myself with limited to no experience working, I'm coming in with a fresh slate and I have to, do whatever I have to do. That was a period of time that I was working with a company that did a lot of renovations and restorations. And I worked 2 or 3 days overnight cleaning a massive building that had caught on fire. And it was not challenging, but it was an eye-opening experience because it allowed me to see that having a strategic approach to my career would be really important, because although I was very grateful to be working at that particular opportunity, it wasn't something that I was super excited to do, as you can imagine. So I really took
A step
summarized
back.
all of
A
those
step back. Yeah.
experiences and said, I really need to pack this in, remember it, and just work harder to find a career path that will give me different opportunities.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. What do you miss most about Brazil?
Family.
Family.
Family
Okay.
is so important to me. I remember festivities like New Year's and Christmas. I mean, we're in November 1st, and in Brazil, things would be starting to get ready for all of the
For
celebrations
Christmas,
towards the
right?
end of the year.
Yes.
And there would be parties. And the thing about Brazil that I remember, sometimes we remember our countries, but sometimes our countries have changed, but we still haven't. I remember going to parties where we would go to one family house, we'd eat, we'd celebrate. Sometimes there would even be gifts exchanges. And then after a certain hour, we would go to another family party and we would feast more and see more friends and cousins and aunts. And that for me, it's almost impossible to replace that. So definitely family, but
Family.
I'd be amiss to not say the beach. I
Okay.
love the ocean, and that's something that is not easily replaceable. It shouldn't be replaceable.
Okay. Okay. What place or activity would you recommend to someone visiting your country for the first time? A must see, must have, must experience.
Must see, must have, must experience. Must see is the ocean, because the ocean in Brazil is beautiful, and there's so much ocean to see that there's various different types of beaches, exposures, activities. So definitely must have. I think that it would be an excellent opportunity for anybody to visit Brazil to go during certain celebrations of the year. For example, New Year's Eve in Rio de Janeiro, it's incredible. You have like between 1 to 3 million people on this beach, this massive beach, and everybody's wearing white, and there is fireworks for like half an hour. And it's beautiful, and there's music and there's celebration. It's something truly special to see, at least once. Lastly, the Brazilian food is incredible. depending on what part of Brazil you're in,
Mhm.
the food completely changes. And
Okay.
I think, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And it comes from the heritage from multiple nations migrating to Brazil
Mm.
and bringing their foods and their culture. So Brazil is an extremely multicultural society, and the food reflects those mixes of cultures that they have.
Okay, okay, thank you. You mentioned that you are currently with RBC.
Hmm.
Being employed to RBC, what services do you offer, especially to like new immigrants coming in?
Absolutely. So RBC has a lot of different business lines. And the one that I work in is mostly focused on retail banking. So for when new immigrants come to Canada, a lot of times we focus our energy in providing them financial literacy, helping them understand the difference in banking system between where we are and
Mm-hmm.
where they may have come from.
Yeah.
We also focus on providing access to banking, showing them how credit works. Some immigrants come to Canada with enough savings that they're planning on purchasing a house. So
Mm-hmm.
we kind of explain to them the different investment vehicles available and how they can plan their future, be buying a house or planning for the education of their children. So to give you an example, RBC created a platform called Meeting Place, RBC Meeting Place. And it's focused in providing the necessary resources and contacts for newcomers to Canada, as well as the basic banking needs that an individual may need. And I find that individuals that have an experience through that RBC Meeting Place, they're set up with the necessary tools and resources to be more successful in their life because they know how to use credit from day one versus an individual. Um, for example, when I moved to Toronto, I didn't have credit at that point. So when I had to apply for credit, um, I didn't know where to even start. And I was lucky enough that somebody kind of explained a little bit for me, but it wasn't until I started working with RBC that I got the right information in regards to how to build strong credit habits, what not to do with your credit, the impact of checking your credit score too many times during a year, or applying for credit too many times during a year. So that actually is one of the things that I think is very valuable for newcomers to Canada.
Okay, thank you. You are based currently at University of Alberta, right?
That's right. So I work with RBC on campus.
On
So,
campus, okay.
so RBC on campus was created. This idea of an alternative branch format was created back in 2016. RBC realized that students want a different experience with their banks than maybe previous in the past. They want banks that share the same values as them, a bank that also provides them advice when they need it, how they need it.
Okay.
So in 2016, we opened the first RBC on campus at McMaster's University in Ontario.
Okay.
And then we had a total of 16 other RBC on campuses open. I think we're up to 17 RBC on campus across Canada, from
Okay.
UBC to Okanagan campus. We have one in Lethbridge University, Calgary, and RBC on campus at the University of Alberta is where I currently lead a team of 2 other advisors, where we focus on providing financial literacy to students, providing professional development support, and also providing student wellness. And that comes in a lot of different shapes and forms, from advice events where we give advice to students about the difference between renting and owning a home. And we also have career cafes where some students are able to connect with different professionals within the banking industry, so they can kind of ask them one-on-one. I'm a School of Business student and I'm doing a Bachelor of Economics. Which path or what activities should I do if I want a job in commercial banking? So then we would connect them with a commercial banker and they could ask those questions on a one-on-one basis. So it's really fun.
That's great. That's great. Share an experience that blew you away in terms of the impact of your service.
So I've been working with RBC for 8 years, and there was a lot of different stories throughout this entire time that really stood with me.
Mm-hmm.
One of them that actually I still remember, I had this gentleman when I was still working in Fort McMurray who came into the bank, and he was a pharmacist in an African country that he came from. And he was currently driving a taxi.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, Josh, I need your help because I want to buy my own taxi. He wanted to buy out the taxi so he could just use the service.
Mm-hmm.
So I took the time to kind of do his budget, review the cash flow that he had, look at how much extra money he had, and look at the goal. So I said, let's do this. You follow these steps. We'll set up this savings strategy for you. And within 10 months, you'll have the necessary money you need to buy your taxi. Every so often, he would see me, and I ended up moving on from that particular role, but all of the saving strategy was set in place. He found me at another branch, and he wanted to thank me. He said, Josh, thank you so much. Because of the time and the effort that you put to help me, I was able to buy my own taxi. And he pointed outside, there was a taxi outside. And that was
beautiful.
It was one of my first clients. And this is 8+ years ago. I thought to myself, man, I have a huge responsibility. The advice that I'm giving to people, it's not just like a nice to have experience. We're actually making a change in somebody's life.
Yeah.
So I've always enjoyed being able to help. And in this environment that I work in, it's just been amplified.
Thank you for that story.
Absolutely.
All right. Let's share a difficulty and the lessons learned as a result of that experience. So we are flipping now.
Okay, so this is actually quite recent. So we opened this RBC on campus at the University of Alberta on August 2019. So just over a year ago.
Okay, it's recent.
And it was a really great experience. We had a very small setup. It was only 100 square feet on a long hallway. Very open concept. And over time, we were able to build relationships, provide value, do presentations, and built a really nice momentum in regards to the positive impact that we wanted to do in the community. As you may know, early March, the pandemic grew to a size that we actually had to shut everything down. So at that point, I was without a particular RBC on campus, and we were working out of our buddy branch. And during that time, it was quite difficult because I started thinking, did I take a wrong career path? Because now that everything is closed, what am I going to do? But then I started thinking, well, I'm not alone. Others might be experiencing the same thing. So my team and I, we built a strategy of how do we remain relevant with these community members that we started bringing value, because they will be facing the same challenges that we are. So we started reaching out and seeing how can we help you during your fall term events or the value that some of the student associations were trying to bring to their students as well. And during a digital campaign, connecting with our contacts, we were able to so far do somewhere between 15 to 20 events from March until now, which really helped us not only relevant in the community, but also make sure that they're getting the best possible advice for a time in their life that is quite critical when anxiety,
Unstable.
exactly, uncertainty,
Mm-hmm.
and by giving them little tools like how to manage your budget, how to measure the amount of money you have, how to make sure you protect yourself from fraud. Those things can help individuals control the factors that's within their control,
Mm-hmm.
and the things that are without of their control, well, we have to wait until they are within our control.
Okay, thank you. What's
You're
your
welcome.
personal philosophy or mantra?
I love reaching out to people that are older than me and asking them for advice. They're like, advice about what? And I'm like, just anything. Just tell me something that I should definitely know in my life stage. And I remember asking my dad this once. And I had asked him a few times, and he told me, Josh, let me tell you something. He said, in my life as an immigrant, I noticed that I always had two choices. I could look at the problem or I could look at the solution. That's it. There's only two places you can look at. And he said, whatever you do in life, always look for solutions. There's going to be obstacles, there's going to be problems, there's going to be people that may not want to help you. Always look for a solution. Look for a way around the wall. Look for an opportunity to find somebody else who will help you or give you the resource. But never allow your problems to be bigger than your solutions.
That's great advice.
Yeah, I told them the same thing.
Share a morning routine or ritual which has helped you well.
So a morning routine. For me to get the most out of my morning, there's a couple of things that I have to do. So first of all, have to wake up early. And depending on the day of the week, early is a little bit different, but I need to have at least 2 hours before I am ready to start work. So waking up early, doing a little bit of exercise, nothing crazy, having a good breakfast. That for
Okay.
me is incredibly important. Helps me be at my peak. Drink at least 750 milliliters of water. There's this bottle that I have, and I fill it up every morning. I throw in some emergency to keep my energy up, and a quick prayer with my family.
Okay.
That for me allows me to be at my very best.
Okay. Thank you. Recommend a must-read book. Something you've read which has helped you, or something you're currently reading which is helping you and you think it would be of benefit to others.
There's this book that I read. It was a long time ago, and it was called Vendedor de Sonhos.
That's
And it's in
Portuguese?
Portuguese. Yes,
Okay,
but
then.
it's called A Dream Seller, and it's the story about this man who goes on a discovery of his personal self, and he's had a lot of everything in his life, but then something tragic happens in his life, and he tries to look for what is the true meaning of life. So it was during a time of my life, I read that book where there was quite a bit of uncertainty, and I found that book helped me do the same thing for myself.
Okay.
What is important for me? Where do I have to focus my priority on? Because sometimes I feel like when you have your eyes focused on the wrong things, you might not be able to see the good things in your life.
Okay, thank you. Josh, thank you for joining with us this evening. How can my listeners make contact with you?
Your listeners can contact me via LinkedIn. They can find me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/Duarte _Josh. If anybody needs to contact me for RBC products or services. If they're in the Edmonton region, they can go on rbc.com/on campus, and they'll find the University of Alberta. So they'll find me there.
Okay.
But that's it. That's how you can find Josh.
Josh, thank you so very much for sharing your experience with us. I'm sure this will encourage our fellow immigrants who are at this place in their lives when they need some words of encouragement. So thank you very much for sharing your experience.
Absolutely. And if I have an opportunity to leave one final piece of advice,
please,
for newcomers, I would focus on finding members in the community that are focused in helping newcomers. I remember when I used to live in Fort McMurray, there was the Multicultural Association, and they have a lot of different partners that helped newcomers to Canada. Here in Edmonton, for example, we have the Edmonton Mennonite Newcomer Center, which is absolutely phenomenal. One of my current teammates at the University of Alberta, when he first arrived in Canada over 12 years ago from Somalia, that was the first place that he got a lot of advice. His family got a lot of advice. And even today, he plans on going there and volunteering his services to help the next generation. So there's a lot of good people out there trying to make a difference. It's just a matter of finding them.
Okay. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, Yolanda. Thank you for the opportunity.
You're welcome.
Thank you to the following persons and websites. Joshua Duarte, today's guest. Xavier Anderson for providing music. Information about Brazil was found on www.contrafacts.com. Until next time, I am your host, Yolanda Jack, reminding you, he who watches the wind will not sow. He who watches the clouds will not reap. Ecclesiastes 11 verse 4. You were born for greatness. Step out into your greatness so that mankind can benefit from you being here. So long, until next time.
Intentional, we may be immigrants, but we are still intentional. We are dependable, it's just that set the bar, but still the best of all, we are intentional.